Now, without further ado, I really want to welcome Dr. Maria Harper-Marinick.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. It is my pleasure to be here today. I was speaking to our faculty and staff this morning. We also have our institute today. And the presenter was showing a lot of clips from YouTube and so on. And one of them was about one of your colleagues, Todd. And it was Todd, the Grand Canyon with his daughter and taking a class from this person who's from Virginia. And I thought, okay, what are the chances? That's a sign that it's going to be a good day that I am in Glendale, Arizona, listening to a speaker from Virginia talking about Todd from Yavapai College. And in about 2 hours, I will be at Yavapai College speaking to our colleagues. So it is my pleasure to be here. It was a beautiful drive on the way up. Nice, silent hour and a half by myself in my car with my phone off. So thank you for giving me that gift today. I rarely get that opportunity, but I was excited with the opportunity to come and speak with you today. So I thank you for giving me that too. So here's what I thought I would do. I pretty much had carte blanche. So I looked at the program and I looked at the sessions and some of the things that you're talking about. So I decided that I would speak about building alliances to connect, collaborate, and contribute to student success. And if I had been able to be here this morning, I would have, and I am going to do that anyway, even though it's halfway through your day. I like to talk about frameworks and context. And an important context right now for all of us in higher education, because of all the pressures at the national level and the local level, is the completion agenda. And since I am speaking to faculty and college staff, I think it's pertinent. So I'm going to try to weave what the conversation is at the national level, why that matters to all of us, and then I'm going to move to the state level, and I'm going to end up in what can we do at the classroom level to impact student success. And hopefully that serves as a framework for your very important conversations for the remaining of your 2 days, right? 2.5 days. Okay, so here we go. Oh, she told me turn it on, follow directions. Okay, so on. So what I will do, because again, I like context and framework, is build the case for the completion agenda. Now, I am not as familiar with all of you as I am with my own system and faculty in the Maricopa. So the caveat is I'm not going to be telling you anything that I haven't told them or will tell them as I continue to speak to groups. So this is why we need to talk about the completion agenda. This is part of the context. And this is important information. The United States has fallen from first place to 12th place in the college graduation degree completion for young adults. And this is of great concern, should be, to all of us, because you look at the data on not only earnings and potential earnings, but also unemployment. There is a direct relationship between having a degree, earning potential, and unemployment. And as a matter of fact, I am not going to be sharing with you a lot of data, even though I have to say I am a data person, and I love to share the demographics. But if you look at the unemployment rates, they are tripled. The difference between someone with only a high school degree and someone with a bachelor's degree, the unemployment rates are tripled for those with only a high school degree. And then for all of us, important is that by the end of the decade, so really by 2020, 8 out of 10 jobs will require some post-secondary education. There's a little bit of debate. We hear a lot that the students will need to have a bachelor's degree, and that's what we'll believe will be the case for most fields. And I know those of you in occupational fields, you probably know the pressures that we have community colleges right now in the area of nursing, because a lot of the hospitals are now saying we're only going to employ the nurses who are baccalaureate trained. So I don't know, I'm assuming you're doing what we're doing, which is partnering with anybody who offers a baccalaureate degree so that our students are not left out. So nursing is not the only one. We hear there are other fields where that's going to be the case also. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Pathways to Prosperity project. Anyone familiar with that project? It is a project that came out in February of 2011, and it was done at Harvard. And the importance of this, so one of the things, Stacey, I will send you my PowerPoint at the end when I get back, because I'll have all of the references with hot links, so you can go get that information. Anyway, this is an important report, is the Pathways to Prosperity project, because their premise is that it may not be true that the students will need a bachelor's degree, because for most fields, they will need an associate's degree. So it's making a stronger case for the work we do in community colleges, and of course, the necessity for the students to complete. I am sure many of you have seen this quote from President Obama from 2009. He also celebrates the work we do and has acknowledged that for most of the jobs that will be available, the students will need to have an associate's degree and some sort of training, could be certificate training from community college. However, he also gave us a huge challenge, and that is that by 2020, there will be an additional 5 million students completing their degrees. I am not familiar with your completion rates, but I'm going to tell you something. The ones at the Maricopa system are nothing to brag about. We've about 50%, depending on the field. Nationwide graduation rates for community colleges is about 25%. I think the graduation, not just completion, at Maricopa is about 27%. And yours may be similar to that. We all know that that's a challenge. So we have two challenges. One is completion, period. The second one is how are we going to get 5 million additional students getting a degree. But that is the expectation. So the good news is we are hot, community colleges. Everybody talks about community colleges, the president, and everyone knows that the Deputy Secretary of Education, Martha Cantor, was a chancellor at Foothill de Anza in California. She's one of us. And everywhere I go we are it. Everyone wants the community colleges at the table. That's the good news. The bad news is now there are huge expectations about what we should do, need to do, and generating a lot of good conversation and debate about the work we do, because I'm sure you will say what we say at Maricopa, which is we don't want to be measured only on completion, because our work is much more complex than that. Nevertheless, it is the completion agenda. I also say I wish someone had called it the achievement agenda, because I think it's a little better suited to our work, but that's not what it is. It is the completion agenda, so we will live with it. A little bit more from the Pathways to Prosperity project. So basically what we have found is when you look at middle school students and you talk about their expectations and their aspirations, most of the students say they will go to college. And I don't know how many of you have children or grandchildren. I have two, actually one in middle school, and she is convinced that not only that she's going to go to college, but she's actually going to go to Stanford. So invite me back in 6 years, and we'll see where my daughter is. So this is pretty common data. The high expectations, high aspirations. Also, if you look at for trends for decades of college participation, college attendance, that actually has not gone down. We have emphasized community colleges, our mission of access, greatly, and we do a great job. Because if you look at how many students you get every year, and you compare that to how many students actually stay with you, we still have a lot of students coming, so we do a great job recruiting and serving the community. What we do not do as well is helping students then get through and achieving their goals, and everybody knows that. That's the challenge for community colleges. So here's more information. So more than 70% of those who start, you can see here, over half of the students who start at the four-year universities, they complete in 6 years. If you look at community colleges, fewer than 3 out of 10 students who start with us, full-time, by the way. And how many of your students are full-time? Does anyone know?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Oh, you don't know. How many of your students come full-time? Do you know that?
About a quarter to a third.
Yeah, about 25%. That's the case for us too. 75%, I think maybe 74% of our students are part-time students. So I don't need to tell you that it's much worse than that for part-time students because it's impossible for them to complete in 3 years. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you need to understand too, the people who are driving the agendas at the national level right now, Gates Foundation, the Lumina Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, those are the people setting the agenda. Last week, I was at a League for Innovation board meeting, and we were also all talking about why are we allowing the foundations to set the agenda for us, the community colleges. We need to be a little bit more proactive because we can find solutions to the problems. Maybe we need to be driving the agenda. But for now, Gates, Lumina, Hewlett, those are the people driving the agenda. So data from Gates, only 22% of students who come to a community college actually have a degree 3 years later. And you can see here that about 60% of the students need remedial. Do you know how many of your students need remedial? Does anybody know that for Yavapai?
We're
Close to 70. I think for the state of Arizona, it's about close to 70. For us, Maricopa is probably closer to 50, is a little higher for math and reading, and a little lower for English. And what we have seen is that the number of students who are not placing into the college level reading, that has increased as we get younger students into the colleges, which I think is fascinating. There's also, by the way, a correlation between the reading and the math. And what people are finding is a lot of the students who can't do math is not because they lack computational skills. They don't have the comprehension reading skills to understand the problems. So it's not really math, it's reading. And I think that should be research somebody should do because I think it's important information. So let me tell you about 3 national initiatives that are impacting the conversation for the state of Arizona and a lot of the initiatives that Governor Brewer and the Department of Ed will be leading for many of us. National Governors Association, they have an initiative, it's Complete to Compete. There is Democracies, Colleges, a call to action. And how many of you are familiar with that? Any of you? That was a document that was signed by about 5 institutions, including the American Association of Community Colleges, the Association of Community College Trustees, the League for Innovation, the people who do the CESI and the SENSE instruments, and so on. And they put the goal out there that the community colleges will increase completion by 50% by 2020, and that has been signed by a lot of institutions. Maricopa, our governing board, adopted that resolution and approved it back in November. So we have not only the national state pressure, the governing board pressure that we need to step it up. And then there is the American Association of Community Colleges. There is something called the Voluntary Framework for Accountability. So I'm going to tell you why those are important. So the National Governors Association, why that's important is because both Governor Napolitano and now Brewer, they're very involved. Well, Napolitano was, Brewer is, involved at that level. And they are talking about increasing the levels of accountability that we have in our institutions, more transparency, and performance-based funding, and different ways of how our work will be evaluated and measured. I like their work because they do understand it's not just about completion. So when you look at their metrics, they have progress metrics, and then they have completion metrics. So it is a better alignment with some of the work we do. But this is what they're attempting to do. Then the VFA takes that a little further, and they have occupational metrics, they have academic metrics, they have completion, they have progress, they have access. It is a wide variety of metrics. And why this is important to us is because the community colleges in our state, the CEOs, so your president Horton was part of that, developed a document that has a community college vision for 2020, and the metrics in that document are modeled or kind of almost duplicated from the VFA. So that's why this one is important. Conversation about technology. Some of the interesting things that people are expecting technology, the conversation about does technology impact learning? Well, yes and no. It depends on who's using it and how you're using it. But what the conversation at the national level is, the trends is, how do we use technology to facilitate learning in a different way? How do we use technology to simplify processes for students and change business practices through technology? And then how do we customize? How do we change the way, for example, that we do assessment? One of the things we're doing in Maricopa is looking at different ways to assess students for placement, and we are doing a pilot on ALEX. It is a placement, it's not a placement, it's a diagnostic tool for mathematics. And it is, the reason why we like it is because it can be tailored, it can be customized, and it makes good use of the technology. So it tells the students exactly what they're lacking, where the gap is. So for example, it could be that someone needs to refreshen knowledge on fractions. So you don't necessarily need to sit through a 16-week course in developmental math, because you just need that module and you can go and get the module. So it's a good use of technology to support the students. This is a quote from Martha Cantor from earlier this year. And basically the acknowledgement that we've been talking about this technology for a long time, but we're not really close to having that technology accessible to all students. And that's something I get concerned about, that we sometimes tend to think everyone has a cell phone and everyone has an iPad. I don't have an iPad. I need to get one of those. But there are many students who can't afford to have some of the technology that we're expecting them to have. So how do we deal with that? Sometimes it becomes a responsibility of the institution then to provide that technology to the students. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this One Gates project, because it has some key questions that I believe are pertinent to thinking about technology for teaching and learning, and questions that may help inform your work and your conversations moving forward. The NGLC is the Next Generation Learning Challenge. And it is a grant that has gone to some institutions. But here are the questions. So, and it is about technology. How do we better engage young people in learning and demonstrate the relevance of learning, obviously, to real life, and then make a connection with aspirations? So this is one of the questions anyone who's getting money from them for that grant, they need to explore. How do we personalize learning to accelerate and deepen understanding and knowledge retention? Those two words, deepen and accelerate, appear quite frequently later. Almost everything I read is how do we work with the students for deeper learning, and then how do we accelerate, and especially if we're talking about developmental education, and just what I said, we tend to put the students automatically, we do, into a 16-week course, and is there a different way to offer developmental education that helps accelerate that learning? How do we encourage persistence and completion in spite of the competing demands on students' lives? Earlier, we were talking about whether or not we had childcare, and I said childcare, financial aid, are some of the barriers to student success that we don't tend to think so much about because we're more focused on academic preparation. But we need to be aware of that's reality for them, yet we shouldn't be lowering the expectations for academic work. So how do we deal with that? And is there a way for technology to help us do that kind of work? And then the last question is, how can institutions and educational systems afford improvements in student success in light of flat or declining budgets? We're all going through that. Our budget, our state aid at Maricopa by July 1 will be cut by 85%. So we will be down to about 1% support from the state. Our chancellor says we've gone from state supported to state aided to state located. I have no idea where that one's going, but it's like they probably will keep our budget to at least $1 so that they have all the demands, the legislators. So we're all facing that. However, in our case, you heard 260,000 students. So what I tell our faculty is those students don't really care what the legislators are talking about. They're here because they have trusted us to come to us for an education, and that should be a source of inspiration to those of you who have access to students on a daily basis, because it is such important work. Let me share this with you. I'm moving now to system thinking. There's do you guys use Blackboard? Yes. Okay, so you know what Blackboard is. Well, Blackboard has an institute that doesn't just deal with technology, but deals with systems. And I had the opportunity to be part of that in 2010. But in 2009, I wasn't there, they came up with this work. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because of my own theme, which is connection and collaboration and contribution. Is the thinking is shifting from silos and your area, my area, I'm academic affairs, I'm student affairs, I'm occupational education, you're K-12, you're university, we're community colleges, we need to view it as a system. And because we need to do these things here, we need to serve the students better. So I like their graphics. So they're basically saying, we've been talking about this pipeline, and we love to use that word, and it's such a linear word. You know, pipeline only goes typically in one direction. So basically their premise is we need to move from that kind of thinking that we're moving the students in a linear manner to something that looks more like this, that is more of a cycle and a system. And so everyone understands we need to do that kind of work. The difficulty is how do we make that happen? Because we are structured very differently. We are community colleges. We're not part of the K-12 system, and we are not part of the university system. So what is the work that we all need to do to connect and to collaborate so that we can contribute to student success? So again, this is something we hear locally with P20 Council. The governor now has an office of, I think it's Educational Innovations. It's a brand new office. And that group is going to be developing the P20 concept, I guess, again. This is the third time around. But they're approaching it from a system perspective. So basically, this graph would kind of fit nicely with the work they want to do. And we, community colleges, need to ensure that we are at the table. Part of my mission in life is that when people use the phrase higher education, they understand that we're part of that. That is not the universities, and they don't know what to call us. Well, we are also higher education, so we need to be at the table. So here are the themes and the trends. Access, that's not going to change. That's what we do. That's how we were founded. Community colleges, as I am sure everyone knows in this room, we're unique to the United States. As someone you heard, I'm from the Dominican Republic. I came here as an adult, and I have great appreciation for public education and access to knowledge and skills, because that is not something that, when I was growing up, if you didn't have the money, if you didn't come from a certain social strata, you were not going to get an education. So what we do here is the only way to maintain a healthy democracy, and that is access to education. So that's what we do, community colleges, and that's not going to change. It's becoming very challenging as we have fewer resources, but I do not envision a day when we're going to have the admissions requirements so stringent that we're going to close the door. I just personally don't see that happening. Clearly, a focus on student success, and some of the things, again, is a lot of talk on developmental education and remediation, persistence, how do we help the students stay on track, and then, of course, completion. Efficiency and accountability. I mean, I don't think that 2 hours go by in Maricopa without somebody using the word efficient. We need to be more efficient. Something has to be more efficient. Accountability, we'll see a lot more of that coming from our legislators, including conversations about performance-based funding. Now, in our case, it's going to go down to 1%, so maybe we don't care how they fund us. But just so that you know, there's this pressure that they're going to be looking at our performance, not just the 45th day count, not just how many people come through the door up to 45th, but how many people stay and how many people achieve their goals. So pay attention to that. A lot of conversation on longitudinal data that's coming from P20 is also coming from Huppenthal, the new superintendent for education, and tracking students across the systems so that we know what happens in high school, after high school, through the community colleges and universities. So keep an eye on that. I mentioned the K-12 model, system thinking, and then pathways. That's one of my passions, is working with the high school, our high school partners, to create pathways for students. Because I personally, and I know not everyone agrees with me, I believe that allowing the students a menu of choices without some form of structure is not quite working. So I believe that we have a responsibility to show them how to go from point A to point B in an efficient and effective manner, and that's what I call pathways. So it's not just a curriculum alignment. That's what we're doing with Arizona State. We have the MAPS program. Maybe some of you have heard of that. We're mapping all of the degrees at ASU, mapping them back to fit in all of the Maricopa courses. I thought people were going to kill me when we decided that we were going to do that with ASU. And I had a lot of pushback from faculty and advisors and administrators, and I just decided, I believe it is not for everybody. We're not going to force people to do it, but it should be a choice for students who want a direct path. In 15 months, we unveiled this October 1st, 2009. By March of 2011, we had 4,000 students. We went from 0 to 4,000 in about a year, and we have 125 maps. And now I have the same advisors who were saying, I will never advise a student to do that, calling me and thanking me, because the students love it. And that's what it's all about. And I told them that too. It's not about what you like or what I like. It's about what helps the students. And then partnerships and collaboration, and we do that. We partner with businesses. We partner with high schools, we partner with the universities. We know how to do that well, and that's one way to do our work. So I'm moving out to Arizona, and this is a quote from Brewer, and is the same acknowledgement at our level, state level, that we need more people completing bachelor's degrees. There was a study done in the Phoenix area, and they're saying just to maintain the economic stability of the region, the Phoenix metropolitan area, we would need to produce 27,000 more bachelor's degrees every year just to maintain the economic vitality of the region. So just think of implications for that. So here's where we are. We have about 31% of our young adults defined as that. Have a college degree, and then of course the rankings that we all love and that we're hoping changes at some point. So that's us. So then let me tell you what initiatives are shaping the conversation in our state, because they'll impact you and your work eventually. So I'm going to start with Complete College America. And the reason why I'm bringing this one up is because as we speak, Governor Brewer, through that Office of Education Innovations, they're writing a proposal as we speak to submit for funding through Complete College America for the state of Arizona. And it will impact all of us. So that's why I'm bringing this one up. And you can see who's funding it. So there's a lot of money behind this one. And it's more about policy and working with government and working with the states. It's not as much about initiative like Gates is funding or Lumina. This is a little bit more about policy. But nevertheless, I don't have any evidence to think that we're not going to get some sort of funding. So just keep, take a look at this one. How many of you know about Getting Ahead? Okay. Getting Ahead is funded by Lumina, and it is work that is involving all of the community colleges in our state and then the 3 Board of Regents universities. And here are the goals. And as a matter of fact, I believe that President Horton was the co-chair of one of the subcommittees. The one I'm on it too, I think is redesign of institutional structures or something like that. Anyway, this is what this one attempts to do. Oh, I thought I had the, okay. Then it's important for us community colleges to understand what the Board of Regents is doing. They set their vision for 2020 a couple of years back. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of that because some of their outcomes are related to how many students transfer, how many students who transfer actually are successful at the university. So clearly they can't do that work without working with the community colleges. So I follow their work and their statistics, and this is what they're attempting to do. They have those areas of emphasis, and then they have a big goal. Look at the numbers though. So these are the metrics. 2010, which is the second column, that's where they are today, last year. And 2020, that's where they aspire to be. And look at the community college transfers. They're talking about from 9,000 that transferred to one of the 3 universities, well, total transfer to the universities, increasing that 16 to 24,000. So why is that important? Because where are the students coming from? But for the most part, from us. So if they have that expectation, and that's pretty public, that means that we better have a goal about increasing the number of students who transfer. You can see the graduate enrollment, and then you can see also how many community college students who transfer actually earn a bachelor's degree, and they want to move from 6,000 to 10 to 15,000 students. Now, what we do know, because we look at the data, is the students who transfer from community colleges actually do as well or better as some of their native students. So with the data, we've been able to dispel the myth that our students don't do as well. They do as well, and they transfer at the same rate with the same GPA as their students. So that's that. Now, the community colleges I mentioned, have you all seen that? The community college vision document? Some of you have seen that. I'll send, do you have a copy of that? Okay, so you may want to, if you want to look at it, I would encourage you to look at it because it's a good document. So here's what the vision is, and this is agreed upon by all of the community college CEOs, so you can read that. And it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because it's really a reflection of what we do. And then there are 3 areas of emphasis. One is access, and for each of the areas, there is a set of proposed metrics that we're all supposed to be measuring and eventually reporting on. So one is access, the other one is retention, and then the other one is completion. And again, I didn't want to put all of that on the PowerPoint, but if you look at the document, it's pretty specific about those 3 areas. So what we did at Maricopa is, remember, our governing board adopted the democracy's call to action and in November. And then we took this document to them, I believe it was in February. So our board has adopted new outcomes for student learning that are based on access, retention, and completion. And so they didn't necessarily adopt the document itself, but the concept of we need to have a vision on those 3 areas. And on Tuesdays, our next board meeting, I'm taking back all of the metrics for Maricopa for each of those areas. And once they get adopted, then we're required to do all our planning and resource allocation based on that, which is a very different way for us to do planning and resource allocation than what we've done before. Okay, so my point is to accomplish any and all of that, we can't do it alone. We need to build alliances to connect, collaborate, and contribute. And here's a quote from AASC and U. That is a higher education policy brief. It was from January of 2010. It is a great document. I will give you the link to that too, in case you're inclined to read it. But here's what they say. Issues such as access, affordability, accountability, and cost containment will further spur state higher education leaders to redouble the efforts to innovate and collaborate. And there's no other way to do that. The word innovate is also important because I know what I hear in my system is with the budget cuts and all the worries and the students are not as prepared as we would like them to be, how can we continue to innovate? And I think it will be a sad day when we hunker down and let those kinds of pressures get in the way of doing the good work that we know that we need to do. And the other thing is, there's nothing that says that innovation has to cost money. There are some innovations, you like that, right? That's Todd going, yes. There are some innovations that would actually could save money or at least be neutral in terms of investment of resources. So we need to shift that thinking that we can't do it because we don't have enough money. We can't do it because we're not going to pay to do it. As a matter of fact, this morning I was so pleased when I was at our own event, just like I'm with you to that, because we had close to 300 people there. Most of them were faculty, so I made a point of telling them, I know their accountability ended last week, which means they're not getting paid, okay? But they were there. So I thank them for their dedication, for caring, otherwise they wouldn't show up. So I know that is the case with many of you in this room, so thank you to you too for the work that you do. And do not let, again, the barriers get in the way of your creative thinking and your innovation, because that's going to be important. I took this from a presentation that someone from the Kentucky system, because I couldn't have articulated it better. But it is making the case for mission integration. So I'm going to share with you because I could have written this myself. All students will enter the workplace. So here's how I use that in my own system. We have this, it's occupational or is academic, transfer, gen ed. And when we use the phrase workforce development, sometimes we are talking specifically about occupational areas. And that bothers me a little bit because I believe this, that sooner or later, everyone wants to, most people, let's say, okay, want to have a job. So some people are sooner because their certificates are shorter. Some people are going to take longer. But I don't know a lot of people who say, I'm going to go to college just because I want to read more stuff and I want to be smarter and I don't care if I don't get a job at the end of the day. There will be some of those. I think I may not two of those, okay? Most people are wanting to be productive citizens and residents. So I do believe we impose some unnatural separations in the work that we do. So I'm calling for mission integration. So here's another one that we tend to separate, again, not only workforce and academic, but also remediation or developmental goes over there, and then student affairs. I am sure this place is not any different than my own place where we want to say, is it about student affairs or it's about academic affairs? And my point is, it's about the students and all of the above. So all of the work everyone does is important. And then public policy actually reinforces that. So as we can engage in conversations at the state level and impact policy, then that's important. Here's a quote from Deming, and basically what he's saying is the only way we can win, quote unquote, is approaching all of the problems in collaboration and as a system. And it's really hard to have that kind of mental model, but I think it is very important because at the end of the day, student success is everyone's business. All of us, everyone in this college plays a role in that. So here is my view of traditionally what we do. And I'm not speaking about you, I'm going to speak about Maricopa. So this is what we do. So we have teaching and learning, and then ASA, that's academic and student affairs. So this is an example of something we would approach. That's me. I am the little dark blue because I have academic and student affairs. Then we have IT, and that will be my colleague George, and that's green. And then we come up with stuff, so I do a lot of work for students and clearly for faculty, and then we come up with solutions, and then sometimes I go to him and say, we need to do these things, we need to support the faculty, they need, they're complaining, they're not getting enough support from technology, and then the IT people go off on their own, they come up with solutions, so this is our traditional. However, no member of a crew is praised for the rugged individuality of his rowing or her rowing. So what I'm trying to do is bring people together within my own sphere of influence to do something more like this. So it is about the students. And I tell people, it's not about personalities, it's not about what Maria wants or Maria likes, because really, who cares? It is about the students, and it is about their success and their learning. And I'm hoping, I couldn't come up, I'm not very technology savvy, so I was trying to come up with some complex web visual, because it's really more complicated than this, but I couldn't think of anything better, so here you go. But my point is to say, we all have a part of that. We all play a part in that contribution to student success. So it shouldn't be such a linear process of decision making. It should be something that's it's collaborative, and again, making connections and building those alliances. And here's the goal, is that we all create an environment that is conducive to the success of our students. I do not subscribe to the theory that students have the right to fail, even though some people do. I believe that students do not come to us thinking, you know what, I'm gonna get up in the morning and I'm gonna make an effort to get out of the house, take my child to child care, just to fail, just to show them that I'm gonna make this effort just to screw up. Maybe some people do that. I believe most students have a desire to do well. Life gets in the way. But I don't think their approach to life is one to, let me just drive all the way to Yavapai College to do nothing and show them how I can be. So this is the goal. So here's my little philosophical pledge. Teaching and learning matters, and the work that you do is critical work. And I will be biased, and I will say this, and I don't mean to offend anyone in this room. The bulk of the success is going to happen because of what faculty do with the students, be it in the classroom or in any way you define a learning environment. So it is critical to have the involvement, your involvement, faculty members, in the conversations, because for some students, you are the only person. They may want to see an advisor, but they may not have time to do that. So those of you who are interacting with the students on a daily basis, you have that power, that influence to spark and to inspire those students. So take it seriously. So anyway, this is work from, how many of you know Kay McClenny? Kay McClenny is the director of the Center for the Community College Engagement at the University of Texas, Austin. And I'm a huge fan of Kay McClenny because she tells it like it is. So here is a word, cut and paste, from a CESI report that I think are important words. So it is time for community colleges to start imagining what is possible. It is time to challenge the notion that some students will not succeed. It is time to relinquish our resistance to require, and in parentheses, in Maricopa, that will be translated to the M things, the mandatory placement, mandatory orientation, mandatory advising. We don't like to do that. It is time to raise not just their aspirations, but to raise our own. And I like to quote Vince Tinto, who says, nobody ever rises to low expectations. You set them low, we go low. You set them high, you go high. To my own children, I tell them, you were born with an A brain. Not B, not C, not D, not F. A brain, you will perform at the A level. My son says, I am very demanding, and I say, get used to it. And here's some more. Perhaps most of all, it is time to assert that access to college is just not enough. Student success matters. College completion matters. And that is and teaching and learning, the heart of student success, matter. And this is from a report, it's called The Heart of Student Success. So what can we do? So here we go. What are some of the solutions? What am I doing on time?
12 minutes.
Okay, let's do it fast. And this is also coming from CESI, recommendation from the CESI report. Do you guys do CESI here? Okay. Strengthen classroom engagement. Integrate student support into learning experiences. A lot of conversation about learning communities and integrated courses and first-year experience for students that integrates these things. Expanding professional development that has a focus on engaging students. I don't know here, but I'll speak again for my system. Budget cut conversations, one of the first items that tends to come up is, oh, well, I guess we won't be able to support professional development. And I'm telling you what I tell my own colleagues. A healthy organization that promotes learning can't afford not to support professional development. So find creative ways of doing that. And I know the vice president is sitting right here, so I tell that to my own chancellor, that as long as I'm in the Maricopa system, I will be the champion of learning and professional development, because there is no way to do this work without support for your growth and your learning. And then changing institutional policies. When I was at the league board meeting last week, what we were talking about is so many times we know what we need to do, institutions, but we do not have the will or the courage to do those things. And we let the policies to get in the way of the work that we know we have to get done. And someone said developmental education was one of the things we were talking about. Oh, we need to redesign developmental ed. We need to approach it differently. And we were having that conversation with two of the program officers from the Gates Foundation. And one of them said, in 1968, John Rouge did research from the University of Texas and actually came up with 19 elements of what makes developmental education successful. So I went back and looked at them, and I will start some conversations in my own system about 1968. I'm thinking, I was like, I don't know, 10 years old. And now we're still trying to say we need to do more research. We know what it is. It has not changed. There was an article in 2002. It looked at 30 years of research on developmental education, and it's exactly the same. Nothing is really new. So why is it so hard for us to have the courage to change the policies that get in the way? And then we need to look for leadership across the campus. And faculty members, you need to play a role in that. This is not only about advisors or about antiquated A&R systems or whatever the reasons we come up with. Again, the work you do with the students on a daily basis has a greater impact than anything else at the college. They remember you, they remember that you remember their names and so on. So you do have such impact on students, and I think it's a gift, and you should appreciate and value that gift. And then this is from the survey of entering student engagement sense. Do you do that one too? Greg, no?
I think we will, like next year.
Okay, the sense is just what it says. They survey entering students, and it's fascinating data. They have a very good website. And what they're showing is the students show up with great aspirations. Pardon me. And in some cases, it's gone in 3 weeks. Or a month. So why is that? So that's the work they're doing, which is fascinating. But anyway, here's what they have found. With, I believe they have about 6 years worth of data, and thousands and thousands and thousands of students have been surveyed. So here we go. Early connections. And again, sometimes it's someone made eye contact with me. Someone remembered my name. Someone missed me when I was not in the classroom. And many of those early connections are going to happen with the faculty, again, because some students, some of them don't even know they have to go, so they should go see an advisor. So those of you in the classroom, you're it. High expectations and aspirations. I already talked about that. I'm a strong believer in that, and never fearing that we're pushing too hard Or some people say, why are you espousing something like that? It will impact the people that you're trying to help the most. And having high expectations doesn't mean that we're lowering down, that we get more students in, but the academics are not going to be the same because we all pride on the work we do and we have to maintain that rigor. Again, clear academic plans and pathways. When you hear the students, that's what they say. The SENS people have a video of students being interviewed, and I'll never forget the one male, African-American male, probably guessing in his 20s. It was not a right out of high school student, a little older, and basically said, if you know, I don't know any better, he said, if you know that getting advising and having a plan and having a pathway should help me be successful, and you don't require that of me, that's called irresponsibility. And I just thought it was a beautiful quote. So effective tracking to college readiness, we talked about that too. And engaged learning, and in any way you can do engagement. It doesn't have to be cooperative learning, it doesn't have to be active learning. This morning, the presentation of Maricopa was all about technology, and this person has done an unbelievable job with blogs and the internet in student engagement. And just great, great work. So it doesn't have to be one way or the other. And then academic and social support networks. So anything the college can do to make sure the students have either peer mentors or tutoring or study groups, or anything that connects the students to other students. It doesn't have to be in person, by the way. That's what social network does. And I know with my son, who is a junior in high school, relies on Facebook to know what kind of homework he has, and relies on Facebook to communicate with his colleagues about the projects and what is done, and a lot of research. The dependence, the reliance on technology is unbelievable at that age. And when people talk about future and forecasting, and we want to be thinking about how do we use technology in the future, I'm disturbed a little bit because sometimes what people of our generation think is the future is the present for a lot of those students. And all you need to do is talk to teenagers in high school or middle school, and they use technology on a daily basis for communication with the teachers, looking at the grades, doing research, doing projects, any imaginable way. It is part of their daily lives. And that's the generation that's coming to us in the future, not too distant. A couple of quotes to end. Don't wait for extraordinary opportunities. Seize common occasions and make them great. Weak men and women wait for opportunities, and strong men and women make them. And then I love this one. You can read it. Okay, I think I got it in. I speak fast. So any questions from anybody? Any surprises? Anything I said that was like,
I just have a general question.
Yes.
Any discussion anywhere about the developmentally delayed population where they might fit in some community education? It just seems like what's happening in Arizona the last few years is they get out of high school, they get their little certificate or whatever they get, and then there's nowhere for them to go. And especially now that the funding cuts for the GED, the ad's gone. What do they have? Is there anything in the pipeline for them?
Actually, I have not heard. That's a good point. Great point. And now that you mentioned that, I will make it my point too. I have not heard a lot of conversation on that. We provide ABE and GED for a lot of students like that, and even though we got cut the funding, the colleges have come up with the resources to continue to support that. As a matter of fact, we had graduation a couple of weeks ago. We usually have about 300 people, and I don't know about anybody else, but I don't get through that without at least one tear coming down when you hear the stories and you hear that without us, those people would have actually no opportunities. Some of them, I remember the lady, as she was crossing the stage and she yelled out, she said, "It is my birthday and I'm 89. And she was crying because she now had a piece of paper that showed that she had the discipline to accomplish something. So I'm a huge supporter. I don't hear a lot of conversation about that, but it is a good point, so I will make sure to bring that up. Anything else? Questions or comments? Yes?
What is Maricopa doing to capture student intent to help with some of this data?
Good question. One of the issues that we're facing is how can we, so we don't want to be measured only on completion. We want to be measured on how students accomplish their goals. But how do we know that? So part of the problem is, what do we ask them? How do we ask? What do we ask? And when we ask? So we're doing now, we put a committee together to look at what are the categories in the intent. When you apply, you have to provide intent. And we're going to be looking at what should be the frequency of the asking so that we have clear goals. So let me tell you a little anecdote about my son. He was taking dual enrollment. Everyone knows what that is, right? So I said, okay, because I supervise dual enrollment, you need to get through the registration process and all of that on your own, because that's my way of testing whether or not we're doing a good job. So he did, and then I'm looking at his printout admission. So intent. And so remember that when he did that, he was a sophomore in high school, and he's a guy, he was 15 at the time. So what would you say, dual enrollment, that he would think is the reason why he's taking dual enrollment? What would be the intent? Any guess? Huh? Well, if that was a choice, he would have selected that, but that wasn't a choice. Well, the choices for, in our system, you have to improve your skills, to transfer to the university, for, job, all of that. And he chose personal development. Now, we translate personal development to usually the people who come because they want to take a computer class or yoga or something. And I'm like, personal development? And I said, John, personal development. I said, why didn't you choose for transfer? And he's like, what transfer? I'm a sophomore. What am I going to transfer to? That's not in his mind. I said, why didn't you choose, I forget. And then he said, and then the other one was something about jobs. I don't know. I'm not looking for work, So I said, why personal development? And he said, well, you said it was good for me, didn't you? And I said, he's right. So I went back and I said, we need to change that question because we have a bunch of, we have 12,000 students taking dual enrollment. And I'm thinking, how are we going to measure their success if they're thinking that they're doing it because they're going to become better people? So we're going to be doing that work. Look at what Pima Community College is doing. They have changed their system. They have changed their questions. They have changed their frequency. So we are not necessarily going to do that, the same thing, but certainly what we're doing today is not working. We're also taking a look at placement. We're looking at, do we have the right tools? Do we have the right processes in place? And if the answer from the faculty is no, then my response is, so what are you going to do about it? Because I'm supporting you in making changes in policy. Any other questions? I know you have to go. I want to thank all of you for being here and for inviting me to be part of your, I wish I could say conversation, but it was really a monologue. It's the non-example. You don't want to be lecturing to people, but I had to get it in an hour. So I am very appreciative of your attention and your presence here today, and the fact that the college provides an institute that has great opportunities, and that faculty members, even without pay, you actually show up. So thank you very much for being here.